That's where I get inspiration to keep going forward, is to try and surprise people.
Bienvenue au Cirque du Soleil.
Bienvenue and welcome to Cirque du Soleil, a sonic trip brought to you by Cirque du Soleil. This is a show where we redefine the boundaries of creativity with some of today's most forward thinkers, doers, and creators. My name is Michel. I'm the creative guide at Cirque du Soleil and the lucky stage director of some of our shows. And people know Cirque as a place where creativity thrives. And I often get asked, where do all your ideas come from? So I'll tell you, at Cirque du Soleil, they come from the gut feeling, they come from the teamwork, the dynamics, the audience, and they can come basically from anywhere and everyone. It's safe to say that at Cirque du Soleil, we love bringing stories to life, and we know the power of full immersion when it comes to creating good audience experiences. Today on the show, we're going to delve into this idea of immersion. And I'm going to be asking to our guest, how do you lift an idea or story concept off the table? Right now in the background, you're hearing the music of Drawn to Life by composer Benoît Jutras. This is a show I have to full disclose, the writer and director of that show, so I was part of the creation team, and we work closely to our friends at Disney Animation Studios and our friend Roger Gould, who is our guest today. So it's a good show, I think, to be the background of this conversation, because it's a show that celebrates the art and the heart of animation, the classic 2D hand-drawn animation, and how we can relate that to the very generous work of the acrobats. The animator takes hours to create one drawing and then a second one. So to create 1 second of that illusion of life, you need 24 drawings. So there's a full commitment to that we found at the beginning of the process. It's very similar to the generosity of the artists, the performers who are in our show. So this is a show about the animation, but it's presented in a live performance with real bodies. So that topic of having animation brought to life with circus performers comes down to the principle of immersion. You're not just spectator, you are within that world and you're interacting with that living context. Roger Gould, my friend, welcome to the Cirque du Soleil podcast.
Well, thank you for that very generous introduction, Michel. You know, the feeling is mutual, right? Those of us who love creating things and working with lots of people to do something that none of us could do by ourselves, that's the fun of it. And it was really thrilling working with you on Drawn to Life.
I would also say that you're a real connector. Not just in one thing, you have this great quality, capacity to, you're very living, and people in your presence work better together. And I think it's a reflection of who you are, because you're multi-talented and a very a great personality, a very balanced and exciting, very rich.
Well, it's very sweet of you to say. I think that the word really gets summed up as collaboration, which your process, the Cirque project, is obviously involves hundreds of people. Creating an animated film involves hundreds of people. Creating a theme park experience, hundreds of people. So it is always about how do you find that core vision, help lead everybody toward that one's idea, but also, as you said, incorporate suggestions and idea and ways to make it even better from everyone involved. And I think that even that collaboration, sometimes people misinterpret to think it just means lots of people working on a project. I think it's really about people working together, really about bouncing off of one another and finding an idea and figuring out how can we make it richer and deeper and better, or how can we take that idea and express it in this beautiful way. And I think that's why the relationship between Walt Disney Animation Studios and Cirque du Soleil was so fantastic on Drawn to Life. Is, first of all, we're both fans of each other's work. As you've learned, everyone at Disney Animation loves Cirque and is inspired by your shows. And the love that you brought to us to literally create a love letter to Disney Animation was such an honor. I think everybody was excited to be part of that.
Every part of the journey was great. I want to start by asking you a big foundational question. What drew you to animation in the first place?
You know, like a lot of people in animation, I saw a movie. I was 4 years old. It was summertime, and I saw Pinocchio. And it was just a thunderbolt. I didn't know what animation was. I had no idea that people made it. I was 4 years old, but somehow that visual expression, that film just struck me so strong. And then growing up, I just learned everything I could about animation. My parents, got me my Super 8 movie camera when I was 10 years old, so I could start making my own animated shorts, very short. But
Wow.
I just always loved animation. And of course, Walt Disney Animation Studios was the dream. Then in the early 80s, there was this brand new thing called computer animation. I got into that very, very early while we were still we could do like 30 seconds. We could do a commercial or a music video. But then by the 90s, the technology had matured, and I ended up at Walt Disney Animation on the movie Hercules, where it was a hand-drawn film, but the directors, Ron Clements and John Musker, who had directed Little Mermaid and Aladdin, said to me, we want Hercules to fight a Hydra. We could draw a 3-headed Hydra, but we'd like a 30-headed Hydra. Can we use computer animation to do that? And I was like, probably. So somehow, based on my thought that I think so, they hired me in the next 3 years. That was my role, was bringing that character to life.
When we did our first visit, Fabrice Becker, the creative director of Drawn to Life, and myself, you guys told us about a great way of collaboration, which is the trust. So, for example, for the audience who doesn't know today about it, for Moana, they set up a trust of experts from the culture, oceanic culture, anthropologists, people from the locality and stuff. So regularly they would go to the trust to make sure that they were accurate and they were respecting the culture and stuff. And a lot of things were corrected as they were going. So when we heard that, we thought, okay, we want to be respectful about the art of animation. So could I remember asking, could we have a few people on the Animator's Trust to just that we could meet every month on computer and sometimes in person? And Ron and Don went there, and Eric Goldberg, and we had the legends with us. And what fascinates me, and this is why you make me think about it, is that they're very innovative, always open. They're not about the past, although they respect, they're really well connected to the roots. They're always looking forward and in a very creative way. And I think you have that a lot also at Walt Disney Imagineering. So my second question to you, Roger, tell me about the work that you do taking Walt Disney and Pixar Animation Studios films and expanding them, being truthful to the essences, but expanding them to create these cool, immersive experiences at Disney theme parks.
Yeah, that's my full-time job. It's a crazy fun job, which is taking our films and then transforming them into new experiences. And I think what's always amazing and what keeps me going is that when we make a film, even a 3D animated film, it's still really stuck behind a screen, behind our computer screen or a movie screen. It's a world that you would love to step into. And if we make our films well, when the movie ends, the audience doesn't think that the world stops, right? When the movie Frozen ends, you imagine that Elsa and Anna and their world, it continues. When Monsters Inc. finishes, you go, oh, what am I going to Sully do next? That's what's so exciting in the work I get to do. Collaborating with Walt Disney Imagineering is to tell a next chapter in the story, to bring it to life in a new way. And at its most fantastic, to literally build the place. So we built the Monsters Inc. factory at Tokyo Disneyland, right? We built the town of Radiator Springs at Disney California Adventure. So you're there with a mountain behind you. Right now, we're building Arendelle Castle in Tokyo and Hong Kong. Wow. And I can tell you, I was in front of it under construction in Tokyo 2 months ago. And it brought me to tears because for the first time in my life, I was actually standing in front of Arendelle Castle. So that's, I think, the joy for our guests is to step into these worlds that they love. And you're right, it's not always just build the place so you can be there. It's also thinking about different ways to interpret it. And certainly, the project we did together was really a very different kind of interpretation. We were not recreating a literal place. We were really creating a fantastic journey. And again, every project is unique. You know, on the biggest projects where we're building an attraction or building a land, it starts very much like our films do. The first year or two is really about story and design. And a funny thing about bringing a film into the parks is we have to ask, where are we going? And also, who are we, the guests? In the world of Arendelle, well, we can be visitors visiting Arendelle. That makes sense. Well, in a world of cars where there are no people, then we have to say, okay, I guess all of us are honorary cars. And in fact, when you talk to the cast members there, when they welcome you, they use that language. Oh, I'm so glad you were able to drive in today. Right? So we try to sort of put that philosophical framework around what we do. We always just start with that basic question, what's the story? What are we trying to say? And let's make sure everything is guided towards that. And part of that question of what's the story is always looking back to the film and saying, what are the themes in the film that we can try and evoke? Not in an explicit way. We're not going to tell the guest, hey, remember the movie was about this. We're trying to embed the themes and the feeling of the movie, because that's what happens when people watch our films. If we do it right, they're not just entertained, they better be entertained, but we also try and take people on an emotional journey. And I think that's why people bond so deeply with our characters, because they were with Anna and Elsa when their worlds fell apart, when they were separated, when it looked like Anna was going to die, when she made a sacrifice for Elsa, and then her gift of true love brought her back to life. So our audience has gone through that emotional journey with the characters. So when you see a guest, see one of our walk-around characters in the park, they don't go up and put out their hand to say, oh, it's nice to meet you. They run up and hug them. Like,
yes, you're right.
We survived that experience together. And I think it's that emotional bond which makes my job so exciting and wonderful, is that we get to rekindle or reignite that emotional connection that our audience has with these characters and these stories in a completely new way.
Just a quick reminder, you're listening to the Cirque du Sound, a brand new podcast from Cirque du Soleil. Fans go first. Whether it's early access to seasonal deals or pre-sales, pick your tickets before everybody else. Sign up for Club Cirque today, and you'll be the first to hear about access to special events, pre-sales, and discounts. Take a look behind the curtain and enjoy up-to-date news on all things Cirque du Soleil, including shows, artists, and latest innovations. Visit cirquedusoleil.com to subscribe. My next question is about, it's related to our show and about what you do. Sometimes you take something that exists, or the classics, okay, you honor them, but you are in a context when you want to be innovating. So how do you do that? So you respect the tradition, you don't want to dishonor it or disrespect, but you want to be really innovative and speak the language of today to today's audience. How do you balance that?
Yeah, that's a nice big question. I mean, I don't know, we could talk about it in particular to Drawn to Life. And to start with, I think one of the things that was so fantastic is when you first came to visit the animation studios, you told me this beautiful story of a show you did about a musician in South America, and how you had gone to his childhood home and sat in his room and literally had his phonograph that he'd listened to music and been inspired by. And I love that you responded to the physical environment. And then you went and you spent time with Eric Goldberg, literally just in his office as he was drawing and bringing a character to life on the page. And you came out of that, and I could see this giant light bulb had gone off. You're like, oh, I want that. Somehow, I want the audience to feel what you had just felt seeing Eric drawing. And it's a magic, right? And Eric, Mark Henn, Randy Haycock, these incredible animators we have at Disney Animation, truly animation legends, seeing them put pencil to paper, it's mind-blowing. And so I think that was so exciting, because that really was in many ways kind of the genesis, that spark that we said, all right, this character's going to go on a journey. She's going to learn that magic. And in fact, she's going to learn to master it. And I think that was what was so fun, was saying, all right, how do we take the idea of the animator, who's not seen by our audience, right? We're the invisible hand. How can we bring that foreground and let that be a journey that a character could actually go through, learning lessons of animation, but as you always said, treating the Disney animated characters as really mentors and guides for her, characters that she takes inspiration, finding, the the bravery of Rapunzel to leave that tower one day and go on a new adventure, to find the warmth of Olaf, who sees love everywhere that he looks. And I just loved really digging into that kind of emotional idea behind every character to help inspire our character, our protagonist, Julie, through her animation journey.
This is so true, because to me, when you're raised with characters, because Julie, our main character, has witnessed her father drawing those characters, so she was brought up with them like older and sisters and older brothers. So, and you look up to them, and if you experience fear, you can connect with the fear that was experienced by your heroes, and then it helps you. And fairy tales are like that. They will put you metaphorically into a situation of like the great big emotions, the big life-threatening situations, the big emotions of love and sorrow of losing people or losing a friend and stuff. So that when these experiences show up, similar experiences show up in your life, you're well equipped to that. So because you're a hero as took you by the hand, and you could identify and experience those things and practice literally, so that you could deal with these.
Well, yeah, I think you're right, and I think that's what was fascinating about this show, because we did start it before the pandemic, and it was a story about a young girl whose father was an animator who had passed away a year before, and her confronting her grief and moving forward came in the form of this task that he left her to finish a piece of animation and to find her own voice. And what was fascinating was we had that pause in the pandemic, and we came back. Everyone in life experiences grief at one time or another, but the pandemic, there was a feeling that grief was all around us. Yeah. And I think the meaning and the emotional impact of the show was elevated and kind of forefront for all of us in a way that we never would have imagined when we began.
It's funny because it's the first time at Cirque du Soleil that we have a story that starts with the reality of a parent dying. And it was like questions internally here at the beginning, like, oh, do we want to do, like, 'cause our show is really joyful and stuff. And I raised my hand and I said, look, there's three-quarters, not half, but three-quarters of stories in Disney that have at least one parent. I mean, you were talking about Elsa and Anna. Both parents die within the first minutes of the movie. So, I know it's because lots of your films are based on fairy tales of Europe. And Europe, it was like, tales to learn life. And there was a lot of death. And so they had to educate people about the reality of death.
You're right.
But to me, it's clear, even after pandemic, that the show, because I wanted to celebrate the life, okay, and the art of life. And sometimes to celebrate something, you need to just remove the thing. So I thought, okay, if animation is the illusion of life, what about in someone's life if you lose your father? So you lose life. So then you will regain life. So to me, it was always like, it's not about death. It's a very positive beginning because it's the next chapter. And a lot of people, would say, oh, there's a death. But not us. It's not. No. We do something about it. And to me, the love letter at the beginning is not about dying. It's the most loving letter because he knows that his daughter will come up out of her grief if she is active. And so she used to always be there and drawing with him, because I always imagined that he was not a really talkative person. They would just draw. There was their thing that they were sharing, and that he knew that the way to keep being present for her would be to send her into that journey of drawing, but not just drawing, that animating, giving life to those drawings. So she would become at peace, and she would take the baton and continue. And I always said at the beginning, she's going to be an amazing animator, but her own voice.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a bunch of really interesting ideas you're hitting there. One is, there's a reason that so many of our films do have a parent missing, and it's really so that the young person has to go out on their own. They don't have the protection of a parent to solve the problem for them or to protect them. And they have to find an inner strength they didn't know they had, making friends along the way and ultimately working to make their own lives and often the lives of those around them better. And I think that's what was so fun, is that we took that broad template and we applied it in the show, because Julie, again, is on her own, but enters this magical realm of animation, makes friends, with these wonderful imaginary characters and does learn and does find a strength she didn't know she had to move forward in life. And I think one of the most beautiful moments in the show is when she sees sort of magical memory of her parents dancing together and realizes for the first time that she's not the only one who experienced loss, that her mother also experienced loss. And I think that's such a profound thing to go from just thinking about yourself to thinking about others. And that moment of growth I thought was really beautiful. Well, one of the things that was so great in collaborating on the project is that really we approached the project the same way, which it started with an outline, but it really started with storyboards, with beating out what are all the moments. And I remember at one moment we were in Montreal, we had all of the boards up on easels around an enormous soundstage. And we just started moving the boards around. Like, well, what's the best way to progress the story? And that's very much what we do at Disney Animation. So it was so fun to go, but what has she learned now? Where is she emotionally? And how do we keep her moving forward? And I think one of the things that I'm proudest of in the collaboration is that we made a beautiful Cirque show that touches people's hearts. And the fact that you'll see people tearing up at the end of the show when they see that Julie has triumphed and overcome her grief and is ready to move forward, I just thought was a really beautiful, beautiful result.
You know, what is it to be a Disney princess today?
Our films are sources of inspiration for people, young and old, right? You know, these are characters who are confronting challenges and move forward in their lives. And that we all have that. And so I think one of the things that I hadn't anticipated watching the show in rehearsals over and over and over again is when the shows are done and they're open to the public, everything seems effortless in many ways. But watching the rehearsal and seeing people actually, have problems and slip and oh my gosh, I mean, it's really, I would be gripping my armrests in fear for the performers because they really are doing dangerous things and ultimately making it look effortless and beautiful. So I think that display of strength and confidence is so fantastic to share with an audience. And I think it is very much what our characters of all kinds, but certainly our princess characters, as we move forward, we really try to think of them as empowered people who are facing challenges, but finding the confidence and the support of those around them to move forward and meet those challenges. Look at Anna and Elsa, Moana, these incredibly powerful Raya, these characters who are there for not just themselves, but for their friends and their communities, trying to lift the people up around them. But even as we look back at our earliest princes, we see that they have these core attributes that are still really meaningful. Snow White literally races out alone into a forest to try and escape and then has to figure out how to make a better life for herself. Right. So and then she finds these friends, and it's her joy and her generosity that helps lift them up and lets her find her own new life. And so we want to find what is still relevant and powerful because these characters are still beloved, and we want to celebrate their strengths and inspire people today.
When we create a show at Cirque, I can say personally, like one of my favorite moments is, you've worked with storyboards, text, renderings and stuff, and then when the artists show up and we do the costume fittings, and when we start the staging, there's this moment of, wow, they're alive and they bring their own creativity, so it becomes way, way richer than what I have in my head and the team has in our collective heads. How do you feel the magic when you have something from a film that suddenly is in 3D, immersive? You were talking about environments, characters. Tell us more about that amazing feeling that it must be.
It is always incredible. For Cars Land out in California, we built the town of Radiator Springs. We built a mountain range.
Beautiful, yeah.
And I remember we had a preview weekend right before we opened to the public, and we had all of Pixar Animation Studios was invited, and people came and they brought their families. And I was standing in front of Luigi's Casa della Tires with Jeremy Lasky. And Jeremy Lasky was the director of photography for layout, meaning he set up the camera shots for the whole movie. He led that team. And we're standing in front of Luigi's, and he just looks puzzled. He says, I made this shot, and now I'm standing in the shot. And it's, it fries your brain. It's just this incredible thing to physically be in an imaginary place. And so for me, that's a joy. And I see that on the faces of our guests and our cast members every day, that they're so happy to be in this other world, a world that they've fallen in love with. I get to work directly with the filmmakers who created these movies and connect them with our partners at Walt Disney Imagineering, because we're not simply rebuilding something that was in the movie. If you think about the world of Cars, we really never went inside Flo's Viet Cafe, for example. So we had to decide, well, what is that interior? How would she decorate? And there's a backstory that actually got cut from the first movie where we learned that Flo had been the lead singer of a girl group, Flo and the Motorama Girls, and that they were on tour, and their tour truck broke down in Radiator Springs, and she ended up staying and then meeting Ramon, and all the cars from her group went to Ramon's to get a fresh paint job or a pinstripe or a flame job. And one day, Flo finally went to Ramon, and he was holding his airbrush, and he threw it to the ground. And he said, "I can't paint you." She's like, "Why not?" I said, "Because you're already perfect." And so she fell in love and stayed. So we celebrated that story. So we created the record covers and the record albums from her girl group to decorate that dining room. Or in Epcot, we created the Royal Summer House. We built this building that was where Anna and Elsa went when they were children with their family. So we had to decide, well, how would they decorate that? What paintings would there be? So that's one of the really fun things in my job is we're extending the story in ways you never saw before. So we get to do a painting of Anna and Elsa having a picnic with their parents when they're little, or we do a tapestry that celebrates their story. So that's the fun of it, is actually going beyond the boundary of the film and figuring out, well, what makes sense? You're going to see, you go to Toy Story Land, and we have 4 of them around the world now, and you're in Andy's backyard. Wow. Yeah, in Paris, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Florida. But we never actually saw Andy's backyard in any of the Toy Story movies. But you're there, and it feels absolutely part of the world. Everything is giant, oversized toys. You get to be little. So we've extended the story, but hopefully in a way that seems so authentic to the film that it never bumps you. You just feel like, oh yeah, I stepped into that world.
You touched the subject of how you involve the creators of the films into the work of bringing the content or some elements of the film to the real world. How do you involve them? Like sometimes they're dead, but for those who are living, how do you do it? Because it must be really fun for them, and but still it's another set of rules. It's not the real the same realities, and so we saw it in Drawn to Life because we were. There's this scene of the comforting sheets. So like giant animation sheets, and we project characters on them. And these segments were original animations by Eric Goldberg and Mark and all the team. So it's the only place you can see it on Earth. It is at Drawn to Life. So, but we're all excited by that, and then we realize, oh my God, okay, so they obey to the laws of animation, but they're projected on these kind of puppet giant sheets. So it's live show. So it's another set of rules and commandments, right? And this was so exciting because it had never really been done before, and because since the beginning we wanted to project on non-conventional screens. They are not screens; they're characters and so on. And so we found out, okay, my God, so this has to obey to the laws of animation and the laws of live show. So my question is, it's very fun to bring something from film to real life, but it translates into different sets of rules.
Sure.
So how do you bring the people from film to the theme parks?
In Drawn to Life, we literally looked at our 100 years of Walt Disney Animation Studios and found the greatest piece of animation that we'd ever made that we all agreed we need to show and celebrate. The transformation of Cinderella's dress, or Pinocchio dancing and Stromboli's, or Tarzan racing through the jungle. And so when we went ahead and said, oh, well, there's a scene with the comforting sheets where we're going to have all these beloved Disney animated characters come to life anew, I said to our animators, our brilliant animators, Eric Goldberg and Randy Haycock and Mark Hahn, I said, no pressure, but we've just pulled the best animation done in the last 100 years, and you need to do animation that's going to sit shoulder to shoulder with that. And they did. They delivered the most beautiful animation. And so, but I think they felt the challenge and the opportunity to really stand shoulder to shoulder with their favorite moments in our history.
There's this scene in Drawn to Life. One of the first visions I had was could we have screens suspended in the air that would be in motion, okay, with an acrobat in the middle? The acrobat is using an aerial pole that is, in our show, a giant pencil. So it's the animator. I mean, I was inspired by when an animator draws and is inspired, it's kind of lifted by, and is connecting to everybody who's done this art form before. And I think it's a selfless, the moment of inspiration, I think it's a moment where you connect with the people in the past and everybody who does your art form. So I wanted to express it by someone who does aerial pole and is lifted up in the air, does acrobatics, and surrounded by screens with just like little moments of animation and pencil test. Pencil test, for those who don't know, is just the pencil on paper. There's no color, there's no inking. It's the raw, it's when the animation is born. It's the raw expression of the animator in solitude who does the 24 drawings to create that 1 second of illusion of life. So here we are, we're going to the ARL at Disney Animation Studios. So it's the Archive Research Library. It's an amazing place where today's animators go and say, what did they do like 40 years ago when they wanted to express that? And it's so well, there's a vault also with amazing treasures there, Mary Blair's work and stuff. So people go there and research. It's very serious. It's very well organized. So my question, I was about to ask them, is there like pencil tests that exist of like those little moments and we could play with them? But I didn't have time to say that. They say, oh, there's a project that we're doing. Everybody's passionate about it. It's called the Gems. I said, what is it? Well, Walt was obsessed by conserving everything. So all the pencil tests that you know, in the process you do this, and then once you go to inking, you don't need a pencil test. But he wanted to keep everything. So that was like obsessive, thank God. So they said, now what we're doing is we're taking them from the vault and we're taking a really high-risk photograph of each of them. So we're reproducing something that had not been seen for decades. It's like the animation in its raw form. So we're very passionate about that. And people like on their coffee break just go and do a little bit of this and stuff like that. And they showed us, and I was crying. I thought this was what we called the diamonds. So the two companies were wishing for the same thing. We just called it a different word. So, and they said, we're going to do lots of them. So just let us know what are your needs, and we're going to put that in a priority. And I remember always, we had a VR of, remember that, of the theater,
Sure.
with all the different screens, with the pencil test. So, and we made a point, we went to the ARL again, and I said, can I please meet with the key people who are spending their hours and hours to do this? So they came and didn't know what to expect. So we put the VR on their eyes, on their face, and they saw their work in a Cirque du Soleil show, giant, projected, celebrated, you know, becoming a spectacular in-motion celebration. So they were like very emotional. So that, again, it was like, okay, it's not two brands meeting. It's two group of people who are passionate. And sometimes we speak a different language, but we're talking about the same universal emotion and storytelling elements. And to me, that example is like, okay, our diamonds were their gems. And thank God we met, because we made that necklace together.
Oh, it's so beautiful and it's so true. And one of the things that's amazing that I've really learned over the years is that every film each film came out at a time when, for someone, different person, it was the most important thing. They were the right age, or the meaning of that film just spoke to them in such a powerful way. And so those moments that you're talking about are things that people really hold dear to their heart. And that's what's so fun about bringing these stories to life, whether it's with Cirque or in the lands or in parades or in nighttime spectaculars, is that when people see those characters, they remember that emotion and they feel that in a powerful way. You were talking about music, and it's amazing how just a few notes of a song, the piano opening of Let It Go, and suddenly people are there, right? And that's an amazing thing, that these stories have become so deeply embedded and in people's imaginations and in their emotional lives that it means so much to them to see them come back to life in a new way. And I think that's that's where I get inspiration to keep going forward, is to try and surprise people. Like, okay, we're going to bring that to life, but I want to do it in a way that they don't expect, but that's still going to tap into the love that they have for these characters.
It's been so great speaking with you again, Roger Gould, my great friend. You've been so generous with your time as usual. So I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody, all the friends. Please give them our regards. Everybody at Disney Animation Studio, at Pixar Animation Studio, and at Disney Imagineering. We are a big family. Every time I hear of one of you guys, I just like feel with a big smile of optimism. And the fact that we could work the two companies together like that, I think it was very uplifting for everybody involved. So please say a big hello and accept a big hug, a Baymax hug from me. I want to thank you, Roger Gould, for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Michel. It's a pleasure chatting with you always. I think, you're such inspiring. Your energy and your passion for everything you do is so wonderful. That's how we feel each other, is that passion builds and builds so that we make something wonderful. And hopefully people will enjoy this conversation as one of those wonderful things. So give my best to everyone at Cirque, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much, Roger.
Take care.
To the listeners, I want to thank you for your presence. Join us for each episode as we delve into the themes and ideas that underpin Cirque du Soleil shows. Learn more about the roots of creativity and how to keep your eyes, mind, and heart open to new sources of creative inspiration. And remember, it can come from anywhere and anyone. Thank you so much for listening to Cirque du Sound. I am Michel. À la prochaine.
Cirque du Sound is produced by Cirque du Soleil with technical and story production by Jar Audio.
If you liked what you heard today on Cirque du Sound, please subscribe, comment, and leave a review.